Coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere, waiting out the alien apocalypse. He is armed with a machete and a microphone. This is The Mysterious Outpost.
But tonight, it's going to be a fascinating discussion with Mary Joyce. You can go to her website at skyshipsovercashiers.com. And I'm telling you, she covers everything under the sun. And she covers military underground bases, UFOs, Bigfoot, you name it, she covers it. And that's the way I like to do things, is cover many different facets and avenues, because if you keep it closed-minded to one particular subject, then you are pretty much, you're going to eventually hit a screeching halt. Exactly. And the thing is, our minds work best wide open. But the thing is, as long as we're not being deceived, it's okay to have an open mind. But a little bit about Mary, I'm going to go ahead and read this bio. She's worked for two major metropolitan area newspapers as a writer, columnist, artist, Sunday magazine editor, and feature editor. On the side, she's written magazine articles and 6 books. And I will give the links to everything in the description below. And some of her books, I'll go ahead and let her. Welcome to the show, Mary. I know you have the North Carolina underground bases, and
there's three books that are currently in print. One is called Underground Bases Hidden in North Carolina Mountains.
And Cherokee Little People.
Yes. Cherokee Little People were I can't talk, were real. And one that's totally different, and it's called Tangible Evidence of Jesus. So each one is a totally different topic.
And something I usually ask most guests is, what led you down this path of searching for answers, searching for truth, being a big fan of mysterious things like myself? Hence my little alien friend here named Jim. But what led you down this path, Mary?
Well, I can tell by looking at your eyes that you're just plain curious, and that's the way I am too. And if something intrigues me, then I like to go and find out about it. That was one of the reasons that I enjoyed working for newspapers, because as a feature editor, I could take off and investigate anything. So I was born with a natural curiosity. That's one thing. The website, skyshipsovercashiers.com, was started because we were getting so many reports of UFOs over this particular high ridge mountain town. And we started it because of the UFO sightings. It's gone way beyond UFO sightings.
Yes, it has. And out of all the many topics that you cover, all the mysteries and the paranormal, what is your favorite topic to look into or just research?
Well, the one that's probably out there that's the most elusive, so it always keeps you kind of tuned in, are the genuine Bigfoot stories. And they're hard to document. They're hard to find. We've come across some really good ones by very credible witnesses. I think we've done well over 40 different Bigfoot stories since we started the website. So that one always intrigues me. We continuously get UFO sightings. And just before we went on the air, I talked about one that just was just posted yesterday. And if you want me to get into that subject now, I can.
We can go ahead and get that knocked out of the way. But to the listeners,
okay,
we will be talking about deep throat testimonies, underground bases, the Cabal exposed by high-ranking whistleblower. But yeah, Mary, the floor is yours. Go ahead and tell us about this.
Let's see here. We posted it yesterday, and one woman in town who owns a Whistle Stop Inn went to get groceries at the grocery store. When she's driving out about 6:30 at night, and it's dark this time of year, she happened to see this big light in the sky, and she ended up pulling off to the side of the road, managed to get her cell phone, and she got a little bit caught on a videotape. But the remarkable thing was not just this big, huge UFO that was pulsing different colors. When the thing took off, there were all these other objects in the sky that looked dark at first, and then they would click into a blue light and take off and follow the big one. There were so many that you can't count them. And we have 4 of her photos posted It's the very top story on the homepage right now. And you just won't be able to count them all. And they move from one second to the next, so they're not stars.
That's crazy.
So that's the most recent story.
How many people have come forward with it? Like, is there more witnesses and things with
Not
that?
in this particular story. It's really sad. People go around looking at their feet or their cell phone all the time and don't really notice what's going on above them. When there's that many UFOs in the sky, now they're smaller, and people are just oblivious, which is sad.
Yeah, I don't understand, because you're exactly right. That's a whole different topic by itself. With that, we're pretty much merging with the machines, and it's scary. Because just like today at lunch, I'll make it brief so we can go ahead and get into the interview. But today at lunch, I was in the lunchroom, the break room, and I was eating my lunch, and I want to just have a conversation with people, and everybody is, I don't even have my phone in here. It's in the other room charging, but just looking down, and just everybody was zoned out like a zombie. And I actually have a zombie back there on the wall, but that's exactly how they looked. And that's exactly how they portrayed, or their presence in the room was just, it's like there was no life at all. Everybody was tuned into their phones. And if you try to make a conversation, everybody's real quick. Everybody's playing, I don't know, Angry Birds or Pokemon Go or Facebook, But it's crazy how, and I just remember not that long ago, I'm 31, but I almost missed the days where we didn't have phones. I really think I could do, now I love the internet. Don't get me wrong. If it wasn't for the internet, I wouldn't be, I guess my awakening process would have been
much slower.
Yes.
It's hard to find it in the library.
Exactly. And, but anyways, I'm digressing a little bit. I'm ready to go and get into some cool, fun discussion with the Cabal exposed by high-ranking whistleblower, other deep throat testimonies, the underground bases. And so
Let's start with the Cabal.
Let's do it, Mary. And you got this article on your website,
yes,
the Cabal exposed by a high-ranking whistleblower. So I guess give me a brief synopsis on this article.
We'll just call the guy Jack. And I had contact with him about a year and a half ago, or maybe longer, on something that was totally different. It had nothing to do with anything secretive. And he was following me on the website for over a year, and he decided he could trust me. In his own mind, he has been wrestling with the information that he knows, and he says the only way the truth is going to get out there is more people are going to have to truly be whistleblowers. And since he figured out he could trust me, he all of a sudden called up, and he was at a restaurant not too far from where I live. Now, mind you, he lives in another state. And so I went down and joined him, and after the small talk, he started talking about things like the Cabal and gave me some insights that I hadn't ever heard anyplace else before. And in a nutshell, he said the structure of the Cabal is like a pyramid, and there's 4 sections to it. At the bottom, he calls it the alphabet soup, NSA, CIA, the Mossad, national politicians. The next 2 tiers going up are the people that we know as the rich and famous around the world. But at the very top, the ones that actually control it all, he says there are less than 70 of them. And they can just control everything. But he said they do not live like the rich people. He said they typically live in a house that's 1,600 feet square. They usually drive like a Chevrolet or a Buick. And he's going on about this, and I'm saying, well, if they have all this money, why would they want to live that way? And one of them that he personally knows lives in an Airstream trailer. Why would a rich person want to do that? And he said, well, they have enough money. They can do anything they want to, anywhere, anytime, and, throw it away and keep going. But anyhow, he said they're afraid. They're afraid that if they get discovered, they might get killed. And he gave an example of motorcycle gangs. He said if the motorcycle gangs found out that their buddies had been killed in a war in Vietnam that had been started by this group of people, he said they'd be out to get them. And so the very powerful ones are essentially living anonymously in hiding.
So, what all did he say about? Did he go into like UFOs? And I see you have 9/11 and the Vietnam War on there. Did he go in depth with? Let's start with 9/11.
Well, he got into the creepy part, and the creepy
It
part
gets creepier.
has to do with, yeah, it gets creepier. He said that the Cabal is in cahoots with a group of aliens that are not nice. And they are the kind that will exchange technology for actual human beings, which they decide to do whatever they want to do with them, which is creepy enough. Mm-hmm. But he said that the people in the Cabal don't realize, many of them, or most of them, that these aliens, once they come and really take over, if they do, they would kill the Cabal people too, because they figure that anybody who turns on their own people can't be trusted. But he said there's this real bad alliance with this particular group of ETs, and I think it goes beyond grays.
Did he mention any names within the government?
Are you talking about people that are members of the Cabal?
Yes, this whistleblower, did he mention any names that are possibly working with ETs?
This big group at the top, or the small group at the top, they're all in cahoots with them. They all know about it.
I agree.
So he did not expose them, other than what I just told you.
What about, what about any type of advanced alien technology? Did he mention anything about that?
He did, and also we've gotten it from other sources. And some of the really awful ones actually feed on humans. That's what I mean. It's so darn creepy. And when I got into some of the stories with the little people, there are some in Tennessee that are still living, or still exist. They're afraid of this particular group of aliens that they call the Dominators, because they like to eat people. They call the Earth the farm. And my own theory is that when Paulides, who writes about people disappearing in the national forest, and many of them are children, the numbers have been kind of outrageous. And according to these different sources, that part of that may very well be connected with these aliens that are called the Dominators by at least some people, some groups.
And I covered an article. I forgot exactly the title of it. I covered it on my YouTube channel, Mysterious Outpost TV, and it was about homeless people disappearing in, I think it was Utah. And so the first thing that popped in my head is that Utah, there's so many things there's the testing grounds. Dugway, I think Dugway is near Utah. Then you have Area 51, not too far away. You have, you just have a lot of high strangeness out there. And a lot of people see these black helicopters and UFOs out there, towards the Northwest and West in general. And the first thing that popped in my head is, okay, for the ones that do see like black helicopters, and it makes you wonder, because of course I don't think aliens are going to be piloting helicopters, unmarked helicopters. Right. So with all these homeless people disappearing, I covered within the video, is it possible that aliens are kidnapping or abducting these homeless people and conducting experiments? Or if it's the black helicopter, if it's hard to really kind of digest or explain. Or maybe the military is working with the ETs and they're doing experimentations for the military is doing experimentations for the ETs. Do you think there is any type of merit with maybe all these homeless people, or just people in general disappearing? That
I think just like the children disappearing in the national forest.
Who do you think it is, Mary?
Just shouldn't exist.
Who do you think it is? Who do you think it is? Do you think it's solely the ETs, or do you think the government is doing it for them?
I think it can be both. When I've interviewed some people who've been abducted, some of them have said that there have been military people in the background when like the reptilians or the Greys were working on them. So there is a collaborative effort going on with some aspects of our military and some kinds of ETs. When I say things are all knotted up and messy, I really do mean that, because we would all like to say, well, these are good and those are bad, but we have everything, and they get all tangled up. And it gets confusing in trying to identify UFOs, because mankind can make pretty good UFOs now. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to tell some of them apart.
And it's
a mess.
It is. And I guess if I had to speculate, that's really all I can do is I kind of lean more or subscribe more to the side of the government is abducting these people. It could be ETs. I'm sure ETs do abduct people also, but I think the government is abducting these people and doing experimentations on them. Possibly.
That's definitely going. I mean, from everything I have put together, that is truly going on. But that doesn't mean it's the only explanation.
Exactly. But somehow they're working together. The ETs and the government.
Always in these underground bases that I've written about in my book, Underground Bases Hidden in North Carolina Mountains, UFOs are often seen in that area. And there's a lake to the west of one of the facilities. It's known here locally as Perry, P-A-R-I. And people that live in the area have seen UFOs go in and out of that lake. Well, that could be an entrance into the underground facility.
Exactly.
Very easily.
And what about, since we're kind of on the abduction part of this, and we'll get back to the Deep Throat testimonies and the Cabal, the Cabal exposed by a high-ranking whistleblower. Since we're on the abductions, now you researched the military underground bases in North Carolina. So within the Smoky Mountains, is there a lot of disappearances of either homeless people, young kids, just people in general?
No, not that I'm aware of. Most of those stories I hear about are in the West.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not saying it may not happen. The creepiest thing that I know of from witnesses I've talked to is a man who, when he was younger, worked at a Christmas tree farm just to the west of this Perry facility that I mentioned. And those who worked at the farm sometimes saw crated animals being taken into this facility. Why? Why would you take, caged animals inside? There's probably some experimentation going on there. Then I got another report from a man who worked for the Department of Social Services, and they had satanic reports in that area where this facility is. Why? I mean, could there be a connection? I don't know.
And one reason why I think there is a lot of high strangeness out in the West is because, just like I mentioned, you have all these bases. You have Area 51, you have Dugway, you have Dulce.
Dulce is the one with the most horrible stories,
and
as far as I know.
And I want to get into Dulce in just a moment. But
I'm not an authority on that, but it's nasty.
Well, I just want to get your take, because something that you say, even though it might be speculative, may spark imagination in my, that's the way, like a light bulb go off. But did this whistleblower talk any about 9/11?
I don't think that particular one did. If he did, it's gone off my mind. If you've got it in front of you and I've written about it, tell me, because I don't remember him talking about it.
It just says, what would happen if the public learned who these people were, about all the things they have orchestrated, like 9/11 and the Vietnam War.
Yeah,
that was made me wonder if he kind of mentioned anything about it.
No, he didn't go in any depth at all. That was just part of a sentence.
Now, how do you come across these whistleblowers and these testimonies? Do they just, because I know you've been doing this for a while, but is it just people from people or what?
Most of my life I worked for corporations or newspapers or, in that particular kind of world. When I moved to North Carolina, I wanted to have time to do my own research and had the energy to do my own research.
Yeah.
And I started managing a health food store. And to my surprise, that became a place where people got to know me and they would trust me. And conversations happened very easily in a health food store. And some of my stories happened that way. There was a couple who came in periodically and they were very shy. They knew about the website and they would just start conversations about UFOs in kind of a very shy way. And I finally said, well, why don't we get together? It sounds like you have some stories that maybe we could write about. They agreed. I met them at their camper trailer. And that isn't what they wanted to talk about. They wanted to talk about what was going on at this Perry facility. And she had been raised in a family where the whole family was under top security, where they couldn't talk about what her father did, and her whole life was that way. Mm-hmm. She knew that this facility was being used for experimentation, for mind control efforts, that this place was city size, 6 stories deep, totally self-sufficient. And that's the first person that ever told me about an underground facility here in North Carolina. But that's an example of how people kind of check me out before they decide they want to open up. And since the website's been up since 2008, some of the contacts come because of the website. And once somebody makes contact with me, usually at first by email, I try, if at all possible, to meet and talk with them in person. You can tell so much when you see somebody eye to eye, and you can tell where they're coming from. So it's a two-sided thing. The people who want to say something want to check me out to see if I'm going to be okay, and I want to check them out to see if they're being legit. So it's kind of a dance of testing.
Have you had any death threats or anything like that?
No.
What about...
And I don't want to.
Yeah, but I know a lot of these things, especially whenever you start talking with these whistleblowers and these testimonies from high-ranking officials, it's especially whenever they're starting to disclose and expose the government sometimes. But the thing is, maybe they're afraid to make martyrs out of people,
Right. And the best protection or insurance policy that most of these whistleblowers have is to become known, is to get out there and be public about it. Because if they suddenly die, suddenly something happens to them, people are going to be much more suspicious, and their death or whatever could not be swept under the rug, so to say.
And you have another article, I believe it's another article, the ET's Dark Plan with the Cabal. Is that it?
Say that again?
The ET's Dark Plan with the Cabal? Or is that is that still part of the same article?
That's part of the same article.
Yes,
the
that's another section.
Article
yes,
that's right next to it is called about the Earth is caged until further notice, or a title close to that. And this man, when I was talking to him at the restaurant, he pulled out a napkin and started drawing on it, and he drew a little circle to the Earth, and then he started drawing triangles around it at different angles. And he said, people had talked about the Earth being quarantined. You'll see that among a lot of people who are into more of a metaphysical approach to everything. And he said it's very real. And there's thinking humanoids, or robotic humanoids, that are actually responsible for monitoring the Earth. And we are at a pivotal point, which is one of the reasons he wanted to come forward. It's like a teeter-totter. And right now, good and evil, we as a species have to decide which way we're going to go. And once we decide, that quarantine will be taken away and we'll be left with whatever we've created. And he's worried that we're becoming more and more violent and more greedy, and he's afraid it's going to tip in the wrong direction. So that was a major motivation for him to start talking.
Very fascinating, Mary. A couple of nights ago, I interviewed John Lear, and he talked about the Earth. If anybody's familiar with John Lear, he
he's an icon in all of this.
Yes, and he believes that the Earth is a prison planet, like so many others. He kind of went in depth with it. Do you think that, of course, do you think that this is a prison planet on top of, do you think that it was made, we're made prisoners within this Earth, within this planet, maybe just like you stated, because we are like on a pastry dish, or we are a farm, like an ant farm. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, there was a TV show. It didn't last very long, a bunch of years ago, that had that premise that this was a prison. I think we are being limited. They're keeping a close eye on us because they don't trust us. It's more like they don't want the rats to get out and contaminate everything else. I think it's more that than it is, just picking up dregs from around the universe and putting them on this planet as a prison. I think perhaps an awful lot of the universe is a whole lot more evolved than we are. And so I don't think it's a prison planet. I think we're just kind of unevolved and too violent. And
we're definitely
everything else too. So no, I don't totally go along with the prison idea.
And within this article that we were discussing a while ago, you talk about mind control. Now, and I heard you talk on another interview about the mind control that was going on, the experiments. What exactly happened with the mind control aspect of this whistleblower?
I don't know if I can say it in regard to him. Some of this mind control can be done at a very simple level. Whenever I've gotten close to this one facility I've been telling you about, I've always been with somebody else or other people. And when we get close to it, you begin to get this weird feeling in your head. It's like, it's unpleasant and you want to get away. I call it a people repellent. And I honestly think that they use some kind of electromagnetic pulsing that keeps people away when they feel like that's necessary. People have also reported that at other facilities too. One that comes to mind is there's a facility beneath the Smoky Mountain National Park. And we had a woman who did have some military background, and she went up there, and she said it was a beautiful day. The birds were singing, the sun was out, it was just gorgeous. And the closer she got to where this facility is hidden, she said the birds stopped singing, and she began to get a headache, and she still stayed there and then began to feel kind of nauseated. Did not get back to feeling normal until she left the area and started to drive away. So that's not exactly mind control, but it certainly is affecting people. I suspect that mind control is pretty easy for them to do. And there's people that say it's very unwise to stare into the eyes of of an alien because they can telepathically manipulate your thoughts because they are more advanced than we are.
And do you think that now with a lot of this technology with mind control, I may be asking you to speculate a little bit, Mary, but do you think that with this technology, do you think a lot of this technology was passed down through ET to the Cabal, to where the Cabal uses a lot of this advanced extraterrestrial technology against the human race?
I think that's a real possibility.
Yeah, because
but their minds are more evolved, so they can come by it more naturally. I think we're pretty easy to manipulate, just like you can train your dog to do stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't think it's that much different.
I don't mean
and they're controlling us in so many ways. They're controlling us with the movies and the TV, and
oh man, yes,
that's also mind control.
And speaking of that, now you're talking about we're easily manipulated. I have a little story that kind of goes along with that. One day, it was a while back, I was at another job, one of my previous jobs, and I was just thinking to myself, I don't know why I thought of this idea, but I thought of an idea to tell everybody of an article, of a fake article that I read online, but I made it all up. I forgot what it was. Like I went to everybody. Can you believe that that this happened. I can't believe I don't forgot what it was, Mary. I don't want to speculate, but everybody that I talked to about this particular article, I just want to see what their response was. And everybody was in shock and in awe and couldn't believe it. So they took my word for it.
And that's why we got in trouble with the Russians and the Facebook and the election, because they were feeding stuff into Facebook, and then somebody that would forward it to you. It's coming from them, so people wouldn't do any independent research, and they would believe it.
Exactly, and it's
same principle.
It's really scary that many people are open to the possibility, or just open to whatever you say. Like if you say the sky's falling, like Chicken Little, that they believe it, and I'm not necessarily saying they believe it, but they agree with you and like they believe it without doing their own research. That's right. The thing. Most people are too lazy to do their own research and just take everything, Uncle Sam, the Cabal, the government, whatever the news channels, whatever they say, they take it to heart without even doing their own homework.
Right. You're right. It's happening all the time, and it's happening more because of the mass media that we have.
Exactly. And that is one major mind control weapon right there. Is
absolutely
the mass media.
Now, there's things where they talk about subtle symptoms or signals that can be on the TV that we're not even conscious of. But what we are conscious of is still very manipulative, or it shapes our thinking.
Let's go into a little bit about you have a video, and you also write about it a little bit. The airmen, Buzz Aldrin, Kissinger, and the aliens. What motivated you to look into this and to create this video on YouTube?
The man actually sent me a packet of information, and it wasn't all that well written, so it was tedious to read it, but I could see it was loaded with information. And so I contacted him by phone and talked to him over the phone at great length. And he was very, very stressed out by all the things that he had seen when he worked at Edwards Air Force Base. And so I ended up doing a very long telephone interview with the man. He lives in Ohio, and I'm here in North Carolina. And then we took that tape, and this one gal, Cindy, went and found visual things to go with it. So it's not just a boring audio. There's images to go with it to keep your eyes busy too. And he actually had a lot to tell. I don't know how much you want me to go into it.
Let's go into it a little bit, because this is the video that you gave me permission to use, a little bit of the video. And I think it's very fascinating. It's kind of creepy, just like you said, it keeps getting creepier, Mary. Yeah, let's go into this a little bit.
Okay, first of all, it's probably too long to really condense, but basically he went into an underground base at Edwards Air Force Base. He had a top security clearance. He thought he could go into this empty hangar where he saw people going in and not coming back out. And when he walked into it, there was nothing there except a stairway going down, and then there was an elevator. Well, since he had this top security clearance, he figured he could go there. And he got on the elevator, and it went down like a roller coaster ride. He said hundreds of feet very quickly. And he ended up being in a place where he wasn't supposed to be, and he saw a saucer-shaped UFO. He eventually got zapped in the head and knocked out. And the next thing he really remembered was being in his barracks, and everything in the barracks had been torn apart. Everything was all over the floor, and he could hardly remember anything. He shared his experience with Buzz Aldrin's wife when Buzz Aldrin came to the base to talk about being on the moon. And because of that conversation, she got her husband to talk to him afterwards. And he admitted that there were aliens on the moon. They'd seen, I think, something like 4 cigar-shaped UFOs. That the aliens communicated telepathically. He said there's bases up there. But he says we don't talk about it publicly. He didn't include it in his lecture. Then his story jumps, and he's on a plane going to Europe for a new assignment on a small Learjet, and they didn't take off because a limo came up, and he had to get off the plane, a small Learjet, I believe, and Kissinger got on, Henry Kissinger, and he had really detained this flight so he could go someplace else. And while they're in the air, this Robert asked Kissinger about what he had experienced himself and about what Buzz Aldrin had said. And Kissinger confirmed it, and then he said he didn't want to take any more questions. So he got interactions with two really well-known people, and he also had his own experience. So there's a lot to it. I don't even know the length of the video. I'm guessing it's about 20 minutes, but
yeah, I think it was a little bit longer, 25, 26 minutes. Yes, but he
covers a lot.
He does within that time frame.
And he was very, very apprehensive. You can still hear it in his voice.
He seems scared. Mary.
He is scared, and he's also been tormented, almost like he has trauma from being in
post-traumatic stress or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And he, people didn't believe him, and that drives you a little bit crazy too. And so he was just, I think, somewhat relieved that I was willing to listen to him. And, but he's still very, very stressed out. I still hear it in his voice.
What was your mind going through whenever he was telling you all this? Like,
I wasn't so surprised by what he said. I was picking up on the stress in the man's voice, and I knew he was tormented, and he wasn't crazy. He just had been through hell with what he had experienced, and had years and years and years of people not believing him. So that does things to the human mind.
It does. Have you heard anything else from him? Have you kept communication with him?
He follows us on our Facebook channel, and he'll sometimes sign in and say something briefly. So he's still following what we're doing. I haven't had any real personal conversations with him other than through Facebook since we did the recording.
So with the time that we have left, the next 15 minutes or so, let's talk about underground bases. So just like I asked you before, what inspired you to get into all this research? What inspired you? What switched like a light bulb to investigate these underground bases?
The man who told me about the first man who told me about the underground base beneath Smoky Mountain National Park, he had been a customer at this health food store for a bunch of years before they started building this underground facility. And so there was a basis there of trust between the two of us before any of this started to happen. When it did, he told me about it. And then I met with him back in a far corner of a hotel out at Harrah's Casino, and with a tape recorder, and he began to tell me that. He also provided lots of photos. This book that I've done is not just, it's more like a magazine. There are lots of photos, lots of maps, lots of things that are very visual, and I write in a style that's very condensed, so, it's not laborious to read it.
Yeah. Do you think that these underground bases, some researchers, they talk about these underground tunnels that interconnect to different bases across the United States. Have you looked into that?
There's no doubt in my mind. And for example, the first base that I mentioned, the Perry base, it's on the Balsam Mountain Ridge. And there have been people who have reported that for X amount of time, they have heard and felt vibrations beneath their homes, and then it stops. Well, these underground boring machines can do like 7 miles in a day. So I think they were experiencing the drilling of the tunnels to connect these places. If it was an ongoing thing, then you would hear that kind of noise, for a long period of time.
I think
go ahead.
I think one of the strangest ones is the Denver International Airport. Especially with all the I think they took a lot of those pictures down, but I still think they have that horse out there.
Oh, we've done a couple articles on the Denver airport. I'm guessing that if you just type in Denver airport on the search bar on the home page at Skyships Over Cashers, they might come up. But it's grotesque art. There were.
Yeah.
Who wants to go to an airport and see a scene of somebody being buried in a coffin? I mean, it was that bizarre.
Especially about to take off in a plane,
Oh, I know. You just want to think about dying just before you board an airplane, for sure. And there's Masonic symbolism there, and that's another thing that makes you wonder.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
There's also a Masonic monument that's near the underground facility at the Smoky Mountain National Park. Why? It's out there in the middle of nowhere, but it's very, very close to this hidden entrance. Why? Why?
And I have another why question. Why are foreign troops here in the U.S.? Because you talk, I think you and other researchers talk about these foreign troops over here working alongside with our military, and it almost seems like they're breaking a lot of codes, a lot of laws with that. It's against the Constitution. How are they able to get away with this?
Some of the things like the Smoky Mountain National Park is actually part of the World Heritage Protection. So we don't actually own it anymore, even though it's in our country. It's not under our jurisdiction. And that's why I think people have seen so many different kinds of military troops there. It's usually Russian, German are the two biggies that have been seen here. And I was hearing about that before we ever started the website. So that's not unknown in this area.
And now with these park rangers, these military park rangers, it makes you wonder if these park rangers are even rangers at all. Are they just,
I'm guessing that they're not. I'm guessing that that's just,
a disguise.
I mean, what park ranger's going to have, I don't know the names anymore. But the repeating rifle, you're the military guy. I've got it in
semi-automatic or automatic weapons, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who's going to have that? And there have been people who've been, on the trails and stuff in the park, and they've run into these guys who've told them to turn back. Go figure. Now,
your website, the Skyships Over Cashiers, now is the new Cashiers, North Carolina, the new UFO hotspot. Now, with all these UFOs that have been seen over in this area, do you think that has some correlation with these underground bases?
There's been UFOs associated or seen around all 5 of the bases that I've written about. So I'm guessing that there is a connection. The oldest facility of the ones I wrote about is the one I've been talking about the most, which is Perry. It actually stands for Pisgah Astronomical Research Institute, but it's PARI. And it was originally a Department of Defense operation during the Cold War. Now it's passed off as an educational astronomy place, but you can't always get in there. And we had a couple guys who had been with the Air Force who were snooping around, and sometimes you can get right into the facility. Other times they saw military people in SWAT outfits guarding the gate. So, sometimes it's, totally off limits. Very strange.
Do you think that we will ever get... People talk about disclosure, UFO, alien disclosure. But whenever I think of disclosure with everything. Things of such as your research with these underground bases.
I think that's the only kind of disclosure we're going to get. I think we're delivering it. People like, the closest it comes to a public disclosure would be somebody like Stephen Greer.
Yeah.
Who's somebody like that who's really gone public with a lot of witnesses. I think that's the only way we're going to have disclosure. I don't see the president getting up there and, announcing it. Any president. It doesn't have to just be the one we have now. I don't know. I think we're in the midst of disclosure.
some people say that we've, been incrementally over the years or the government has been disclosing information about UFOs and aliens, either through the Freedom of Information Act, through these documents that's been released. But to me, I don't think that's the meat and potatoes. A lot of the meat and potatoes is the things that's being hid and kept secret from the public eye. And, such as the underground bases that you research and everything else that you research. And also with these bases like Dulce, Area 51, even Dugway, what is actually going on with these, underneath these bases, or within these bases? That's what I want to know, Mary. I want to know the meat and potatoes. What is actually going on? Is our government working with ETs? Which I think, yes. And it makes you wonder, what is the end game? I guess to wind things down, what do you think is the ultimate agenda of the Cabal? What do you think the end game is for the human race?
What they think, what the Cabal seems to think, is that they pretty much think they're in charge right now, and they are to a large extent. But they have this arrangement with these ETs, and they are led to believe they're going to be left controlling the world totally when the time is right. So I don't know. We're just going to have to hope and pray the good guys come in, and all the good guys down here do stuff, and we have to do more. Humans sit around and they worry and they fret, oh my God, this is going to happen. What's going to happen? Blah, 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 blah. And they're not doing anything to get the vibration of this planet up, and we can all do that wherever we are. And each time we do something that's turning on the light a little brighter, we're counteracting this negative.
Just like what we're doing right now, Mary.
Yeah, right. And if we're not turning up the light, there's no hope of, getting rid of the darkness. So I think we see things too big sometimes, and we have to see what each one of us can do. You're doing it with your radio show and your podcast. I'm doing it with the website. Everybody has a way they can make the world a little bit better. Everybody has a way they can share knowledge. But we can't just be zombies, mesmerized by our cell phones and our TVs. And
exactly.
That's what we've become too much.
Very well said, Mary. That was exactly that. You're exactly right. And I tell you what, this hour has flown by. But to round things up, where can people support your research, and where do you want people to buy your books? Off of your website, off of Amazon, or how can people support your research?
No, all the books, they can get them through Amazon. And the one we've kind of mentioned tonight the most is Underground Military Bases Hidden in North Carolina Mountains. And I would encourage people not to think about it in terms of something that's easy to read. There's a lot of information there, and I've done my best using my back newspaper experience to try to make it as readable and understandable as possible. I get real sick of books that just have to pile it on before you get to the essence of it. And I like to boil things down and make it simple. But there's lots of visuals, so you don't just have to read green pieces of paper.
Exactly. And I really appreciate your time tonight, Mary. We can definitely stay in touch, because I want to eventually have you back on the show to talk about more of your other books, about the little people.
Right.
What's the title of that book? I don't have it right in front of me.
All right. Cherokee Little People.
Cherokee Little People.
And, that's been a reality of little people around here in the mountains. And the other book is Tangible Evidence of Jesus, which is worth mentioning this time of year because it gets into the science and the archaeological information about Jesus that really expands who he was. And it makes a good Christmas present.
Exactly. And Mary, I salute you. You have been phenomenal. I love
the twinkle in your eyes, and just keep doing your show, and we'll do our best to keep the light a little brighter.
We surely will, and you stay right there. And that was Mary Joyce. I will give all the information in the description below. Go to her website, skyshipsovercashiers.com. Support her research, buy her books. We have to, like I say in every show, we have to support these researchers because they are the ones doing the groundwork. They're the ones. Now, you don't have to believe in any of this. But the thing is, for us to evolve consciously and spiritually, physically, we need to keep our minds open to every possibility. We can't believe in just what Fox News, CNN, Uncle Sam says, because then we are no different than the ant farm that we were discussing earlier. But anyways, I'm gonna get the links in the description below. Please subscribe if you're just coming across this information or my channel for the first time. And until next time, I got many other interviews coming soon, so stay tuned. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a very bumpy ride, but I'm telling you, it's going to be awesome. Anyways, until next time, keep truthing and have a good one.